here is the evidence in the way that I see it, the evidence. The evidence is that there has not been a tax accounting office here for 20 years. That's the evidence, okay? The evidence is that the NAACP, along with Gene Sutherland's shop, has been here since about 1985. That's the action. The evidence is that on the date of this device, there was no tax people in the building. That's the evidence. The evidence is that Colorado Springs NAACP had members in the building. If you would have called the Colorado Springs branch throughout the holidays, it would have told you on voice messages that the building would be back open for business on that date and on that time. Okay? That's the evidence. The evidence speaks. So that evidence should be presented to the courts that there is no tax here. There's not a tax office where you see people coming in to even do taxes here. There is a beauty salon and there is a civil rights organization, which is the Colorado Springs branch of the NAACP. That is the evidence, and I live off evidence. So I would ask the prosecuting attorney, will that evidence be presented in documentation to the courts that in 20 years there has not been a criminal or an alleged criminal will present any type of information to lesser the charge. So it has to be what the prosecutor is prepared to present to the courts in order to substantiate its case.
Guy.
One of us, in my opinion, based on the evidence, was the target. Based on the evidence and based on my opinion, one of us was the target. Now that has to be the investigating law enforcement agency and the prosecutors to try to figure out which one of us was the target. But one of us, okay, was a target. I do not believe, and I'll say it on, I do not believe that the tax individual was a target, based on my experience of not being in the building for 20 years. You know, I was responsible for young men's lives that may go into combat, but that was expected of them. As a law enforcement officer, as a cover officer, I was responsible for my fellow deputies to ensure that in a situation that their lives were protected and the citizens of this community were protected. And now I hold that same responsibility for the all-volunteer staff of the Colorado Springs branch of the NAACP. And I don't have that cover of armor that I had of the First Sergeant in the Army. I don't have the cover of armor I had of the law enforcement. I'm now just a regular citizen, and it's my responsibility again to look after the welfare of these men and women that come into this office every day for the sake of doing good for this community. And that weighs heavy on me that I allowed my guard at one time to be down, and that put them in harm's way. So, as you asked earlier, I'll never feel safe again. I'm sorry, I'll never feel safe again for them, because it is my responsibility to make sure that their lives goes on and be healthy and do things and not put them in harm's way. So we're here. We are an organization that will continue to exist based on volunteers, but as a president, or any president, whether it's the nation or governor or mayor or an organization, it should be your sole responsibility to ensure that the people that come in and serve you, that you ensure that they are safe in a safe environment, and you shouldn't let your guard down and let harm come to them. And just digressing back and watching Selma and during the civil rights era, this bombing came to mind because at the initial offset of the movie was the little girls from the church, the explosion, and how much damage. And it's troubling to me that in a country, the most advanced country in the world in 2015, that we're still struggling with the 50s and 60s civil rights movement. Bombing was a thing that happened, you know, which was hate and death and destruction. And that have we not as a nation gone any further in our belief and in our freedom of all our citizens? Have we not gone any further? Have we just put a Band-Aid on it? Have we just put lipstick on a different pig with the same pig? Have we done that in 2015? You know, you have to kind of ask yourself again with Dr. King, how long do we as a nation move past the race card? When on both sides, when do we as a nation just say that we are Americans? When do we as a nation say that there is no longer necessary to have the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People even around? Because we are a nation of people, and we care not about color or skin, we just care that we are American. But unfortunately, we're not there yet. And 50 years later, will we ever get there? Will our children and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, will they continue on with this struggle, with this country until it doesn't exist anymore, struggle with defining what it wants for all of its citizens on an equal basis? Will we continue to struggle for the rest? Is this just something that I'm struggling with to the day I die, and someone else picks it up and go on and they pass on? We have to continue to ask ourselves those tough questions. And that's why in this community, we have to ask ourselves those same questions, because we should be a leader in this nation to understand that we are moving beyond race in Colorado Springs and El Paso County, which will reflect the great state of Colorado, so the rest of the nation can see this. We need to be able to do that. And in order to do that, we have to have those serious conversations. You and I are sitting here talking as two men, not as a black man, not as a white man. We're discussing as two men. Why can't the rest of the world or the rest of this nation sit around? This may be defined as a hate crime, but is that what the normal citizens of this nation is? It's about hate? I think not. I don't think the normal citizens of this community is about hate. Okay? I would wish it wasn't. But this community has to ask itself that question: where do we start moving on so we can be the beacon of that light to lead this nation to make sure that it continues to be the best for all the world to see? And we can't do that until we get past this thing that we call race.